Okay, I want to talk a bit about these white nationalist Christians, their belief system, okay? And a part of their belief system is that this should be a Christian nation, and they hate Jews. They're anti-Semites, okay? Jews will not replace us. And yet they say they follow the Bible, but 9 out of 10, the stuff they're preaching is from the Old Testament. Is the Old Testament what Christ was preaching and teaching? No. Okay. The Old Testament, for those, brilliant white supremacist, white nationalist Christians, are the books of the basically part of the Torah. Those are the holy books of Judaism. Oh yes, the ones that you want to get rid of, those anti-Semites, these ones that are anti-Semites and rail against it. What do? When they want to browbeat people, they go to the Old Testament. Do they follow what Jesus was saying? No, they don't. Because Jesus said nothing about homosexuality. He said nothing about prosperity preaching. He said none of those things. So all the things they want to uphold come from the Jewish religious ideology, okay? They want to go with the 10 Commandments. That goes with what? The Jewish ideology, okay? What was Christ's ideology? Love one another, okay? Against love there is no law. So what is loving about hating homosexuals? Okay? He said what? It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. So what are they doing? Preaching the Old Testament prosperity, okay? Everything they want to preach about under the name of Christ, which Christ wasn't teaching, is in the Old Testament, which is the holy books of the Jewish Israelites. See the description, okay? Now, they'll say, well, we don't like Jews because they're the ones that killed Jesus. They're the ones that crucified Jesus. No. The ones that actually nailed him to the cross were what? Romans. Italians. Okay, so you're going to hate all Italians now? Okay? Because they're the ones that actually crucified Christ. It was the Italians. And the ones that set him up to be condemned by the Roman emperor, okay, was what? The hierarchy, okay? Those that are preaching what? Against homosexuality, prosperity teaching, all the rest of it that you want to use are the ones that actually condemned Christ. Because what was he talking about? He was talking about loving one another. He was talking about so, in one way it's funny, in another way it's very sad that they don't know what they're preaching and what they're holding up, rather than the teachings that Yeshua ben Joseph, yes, his name was Yeshua ben Joseph. His name wasn't Jesus. It's Yeshua ben Joseph because he was what? Jewish, okay? Son of Joseph from Nazareth. Okay? So again, we have people that are out there preaching and condemning from what? The Old Testament. Now, if you're going to use the Old Testament and throw out what Christ was actually saying and actually teaching, then maybe you want to go back and read the rest of it. Because they weren't only talking about, killing homosexuals, it was also those that were doing affairs, okay? The cheaters, okay? You don't hear them talk about that, though, do you? And then there was a whole lot of rules and regulations about what to eat, how to eat. You have to wash your hands before you eat, okay? All these rules and regulations. So if they're going to follow the Old Testament, if that's where they want to get all of their knowledge and all the stuff they want to use to browbeat people with, then they should follow the whole of it. Okay? Or are they going to follow the teachings of Christ? Because the Christ they're teaching is not the Christ of the Bible. They've got some fictitious Christ that they've got, made up in their illusory drama. Okay? So yes, the Old Testament that you want to pride yourself on when you want to, again, condemn people, condemn this, condemn that, had nothing to do with what Yeshua ben Joseph came to teach. Okay? If you want to follow Christianity, and he did not come to be a religion, he came to reform Judaism. To reform Judaism. Okay? Now, if you want to say that you're just a follower of Christ, and not the rest, then you need to throw all the Old Testament away and just study what Christ was actually teaching. Because that's really gotten swept under a carpet somewhere, nowhere to be seen. Okay? So you might want to take it out and look at it. Do a little research. Okay? The Old Testament is the holy book for the Jewish community. It's part of the Torah, okay? It is their holy teachings. Okay, they have nothing to do with Christ, and what you're talking about in your evangelical churches have nothing to do with Christ either. So, again, what are they following? These so-called white nationalists, Christians. They're following the Torah. And they've thrown out everything that Christ was actually teaching. So how can they say they are followers of Christ, that they are good Christian community? Because what Christ was speaking of and teaching bears no resemblance to what we're hearing them say in these so-called churches. So I'm going to leave this here. Love and light. See you online. Look at the description.